Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Tim.
And this is the Paranoia Files.
I'm actually Jessica. But
Surprise!
but I'm sick. And on the recording, I sound like a man. So I'm Tim today. Wait, while we're making fun of me today, I found this picture of me and my mom.
Mhm.
Why was my neck so long? This was before Photoshop. So why was my neck so
I
long?
think maybe it's just the hair. Maybe the hair
Look at
is
my
just...
neck compared to my mom's neck. That is totally not the hair.
Oh, well, you've really grown into your neck, though. You just needed a few years to grow into it.
I look like a giraffe.
So my sister was hosting for Easter. And we went over to her house and we were playing a card game, and she has a baby, so she's like was always getting up to like go do stuff. Every time she would get up, me and my mom, okay, it was me, but my mom was my accomplice. We would look at her cards.
Oh no, Anna.
We were playing this game called golf, and you have like these 4 cards and you don't know what they are. You get to pick one card to peek at in the beginning, and the goal is to have like the lowest like score, so like you add up all the numbers on your cards. And whenever she'd get up from the table, we'd look at all of our cards and hers.
Who won?
My mom won a couple times. And then I think I won like once, and then my sister won maybe once.
You were cheating and you still didn't win?
Well, because you switch out your cards. I don't know. Well, my mom kept laughing, and she like almost got us caught a couple times because she kept laughing. Every time my sister would come back, she would crack up laughing. I'm just like, oh my God, Mom, you're going to get us.
Could be so obvious.
Could be so obvious. My sister doesn't listen to this podcast, so thankfully she will never know. So, we didn't actually do the Paranoia intro. I forgot, but it's fine.
Spoiler, this is the Paranoia The Paranoia Files. You're going to look at me next time too, and you're going to be ready for the intro, and I'm going to be like, shit, what was my part?
On this episode of making Jessica question everything.
We're going to spend 45 minutes just looking at Jessica disapprovingly.
Yeah, making her question like the past 4 months of her life. What even is this podcast? She's counting on her fingers.
That would be in December.
December.
That would be 4 months ago. What was I doing 4 months ago?
April is the 4th month of the year.
Yeah, but
it's almost April. April's almost over.
But
January, February, March, April.
Yeah, but you can't count April till it's all the way over.
I meant next time.
Okay. You win this round.
What'd I do? Oh. I'm keeping that in.
Pardon.
Okay. My first story comes from the subreddit Ghost Stories. It's called A Terrifying Encounter While in Iraq. I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army and ETSing, which means they're getting out, from the military when President Bush ordered more troops into Iraq in 2003. I had just returned home to Austin, Texas, when I was summoned into my local National Guard unit at Camp Mabry and told that I was being recalled to the Army, but the unit was already tasked out to deploy to Iraq. I was not part of their unit yet, so the commander offered to give me a waiver to deploy with a government contractor, Halliburton, in Houston. I knew that I would make more money as a contractor, so I took the offer. Not long after arriving in Kuwait at Camp Doha.
Spoiler. Is this about the giant?
No.
Okay, go on.
There's a giant?
Yeah, some story.
Oh, are you doing it on your...
No.
Okay, what? Tell me.
Some story about these guys. They were in the Middle East, and it's supposed to be a true story, and I think they went to a cave system. There was some big giant guy, and they were like trying to fight him, and like nothing was taking him out. And then finally they took him out, and then the body of it got taken to like some facility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be a true story that some people in the military experienced in the Middle East.
Just giant people?
Yeah.
Or just this one giant guy?
Well, because they're supposed to be giants.
Mm-hmm.
Conspiracy wise.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was, I think it was only one in this scenario, but I'll try to find it.
Not long after arriving in Kuwait at Camp Doha, I began working with the operations team overseeing logistics affairs. We would oversee the daily convoy of supply between Kuwait and Baghdad, a route riddled with IED incidents, small arms skirmishes, and almost constant breakdowns of army and civilian vehicles. Because I was a saw gunner in the 1st Infantry Division while in active duty and was technically still in the Guard, I was often in the convoys manning the mounted weapon that accompanied the mostly civilian convoys. During these runs, we had a few strange encounters in an area south of Baghdad, known then as Camp Babylon, occupied by French troops but then designated an archaeological site for obvious reasons. Camp Babylon was set up in the area that was said to originally be inhabited by the famous Tower of Babel. Indeed, there were ruins there that did look like a massive structure once stood in that spot. I had 2 strange incidents happen to me while passing through there. The first incident seems to be a bit benign, but sets the mood for the second. We were passing through Camp Babylon in the afternoon one day when our convoy took small arms fire. The SOP at the time, which was standard operating procedure,
Thank you.
was, you're welcome, was to stop the convoy and return fire. This was because in the past, such incidents ended up being a lone gunman attempting to scare the convoy into running into IEDs on the road. So because of this, the procedure changed to stop the convoy, dismount, and then return fire. While engineers looked for explosive devices on the road, we scanned the horizon for enemy. Nothing. They most likely fled immediately. However, the ruins around Camp Babylon were alive with shadow figures that seemed to move around the area. Several times we would spot the figures, but they would immediately disappear. The contractor, lying beside me with his weapon, commented, "How odd that we are in the shadow of Babel and fighting the supernatural." I didn't respond, but knew he was a 32nd degree Mason who was really into the arcane aspects of Babylon, etc. I didn't feel at the time that much was supernatural, but certainly did see the shadowy and bizarrely small figures dart around the structures. Once the road was deemed clear, we continued on to Baghdad. The second incident occurred about a month later. At this point, the weather in southern Iraq and Kuwait had turned quite cold at night. During this encounter, we had just completed the supply run to Baghdad and were running back to Camp Doha in Kuwait when a vehicle in our convoy broke down. Once again, we found ourselves right at Camp Babylon. While the army mechanics took a look at the vehicle, the rest of us took up fighting positions around the area. Strange things began to occur. It started with a strange light bobbing in the desert. Thinking it was a person with a flashlight, we used night vision goggles to watch. It was simply a glowing ball of light moving towards a set of ruins. After the initial contact with the light, a few of us had moved forward away from the convoy to see what the source was. After seeing it was self-contained and not a person, we were a bit alarmed. Then we heard a sound that I will never forget. A long wailing came from one of the ruined structures/foundations not far away. It sounded like a woman in agony mixed with loneliness. On and on the sounds went while we huddled in the cold and dark, wondering what the hell we were listening to. With our night vision goggles equipped, we used our flashlights to spot the ruins. If you've ever done this, you will know that a normal flashlight with night vision goggles looks like a massive beam of light. We scoured the area, but no source of the wails or the ball of light were seen. About the time we were told via radio that the vehicle was repaired and ready to roll, so we decided to return to the convoy. I was slinging my saw over my shoulder when I noticed my contractor partner was staring at the ruins in horror. He was frozen. I shook him and he snapped out of his stupor, quickly leaving the area with the rest of us. Once we were back at the camp, and it was pleasantly daylight the following morning, several of us were chatting about the encounter at Camp Babylon before our daily operations briefing. It was then that I remembered the terrified expression on his face, so I asked him about it. He was still obviously traumatized by the event, but managed to explain that as we were leaving our position on the sandy hill, he saw a tall black figure standing beside the ruins. It was watching us as we were looking for him, her/it. He said that he felt an instant wave of despair hit him and thought that he was going to die. He didn't remember leaving the area either. His next memory was in the Humvee headed to Kuwait. I now write nonfiction books about haunted places for Llewellyn Publishing and have visited hundreds of reputedly haunted spots, but I'll never forget the wailing figure at the ruins of Babel. It's also worth noting that when I related the story to some of our Pakistani employees at Camp Doha and Camp Arifajan, they were also quite horrified. One of them, a translator called Ardi, said that we had encountered a Djinn or a damned spirit and that we were lucky to be able to tell the tale, and I agree.
I think jinn are supposed to be pretty, like, scary ghosts.
I wonder if my husband has any stories like that because he was in Afghanistan.
Real quick, this was just on my thing, and it says, "My mom found this buried in her garden. What is it?"
A rock. It's a giant rock.
The top comment with 12,000 likes is, "I'm no expert, but it looks like a rock to me." What were they expecting?
Right?
Okay, anyways. I saved that just to show you because I thought it was funny. Okay. So mine comes from Our No Sleep. It's supposed to be a true story.
Ooh.
Um, the following is a story my grandpa used to tell me before he passed away. I thought Our No Sleep might be able to appreciate it. This story is really long, so if you don't want to read the full story, I suggest skipping the first two paragraphs. Disclaimer, I'm not a World War II buff, and I'm just telling the story the way I remember hearing it. Some dates and locations may be slightly off. My grandpa was a British infantryman in the Second World War. He was only about 19 years old when he enlisted to serve his country, and while he thought that joining the military would give him opportunities to see exotic locations around the world, he was never deployed to Tunisia or Italy or the Pacific. Instead, he ended up practically in his own backyard, Switzerland. This is just some historical information, but it is important to understand before reading the rest of this story. Switzerland did its best to maintain neutral status throughout the war, but regardless of its attempts to maintain neutrality, Switzerland was still highly sought after by both the Allied and Axis powers. Once the Nazis began committing acts of aggression against Switzerland, England provided reinforcements to the Swiss military. Yet, in an effort to prevent open war within its borders, the Swiss government instructed its military and subsequently the British reinforcements to perform a series of tactical retreats into the Alps. That's how my grandpa found himself stationed in a remote village in the Swiss Alps. At this time, it was early in the winter of 1943, and my grandpa's company was stationed in a secluded village of about 500 people. Okay, part of the advantage that they had with this location was that it was really hard to get to and therefore had little chance of being spontaneously invaded by Nazi Germany. But this was also a disadvantage because it made communication with the rest of the Swiss military very difficult. The issue with communication was further compounded when sometime in early December, a series of blizzards swept through the region and completely destroyed the first few lines of communication that they had in the first place. So essentially trapped in this isolated Swiss village without being able to make contact with the rest of the army, my grandpa's captain decided it would be best to uphold the standing orders and continue defending the village. Weeks passed. Any roads to the outside world were buried in 7 to 9 feet of dense snowfall, and any telegraph or phone lines that they had were equally useless. It grew deeper into winter, the leaves were stripped from the trees, and the bare trunks protruded from the mountainside like broken ribs. The town was nestled between two large mountains. Sunlight only directly reached the town for a few hours each day, making the soldiers feel as if they were living in a state of perpetual dusk. One night, my grandpa was at the town bar with a few of his friends from the company, and a group of locals approached them. One of them in particular was visibly upset. All of the Swiss people in town grew up speaking German, and none of them were used to having Brits around. So one of them began shouting in broken English, "Where take you the children?" Luckily, one of the guys my grandpa was drinking with spoke fluent German and was able to act as an impromptu translator. After several minutes of confusion and yelling, the translator turned to my grandpa and the rest of the soldiers and said, "They say some of the village children have gone missing. They want us to do something about it." Now, obviously, the British military doesn't exactly act as a bunch of mercenaries for hire, so my grandpa and his friends told the villagers to come back to the headquarters, really just a makeshift barrack that they had thrown together in the town's church, to talk to the captain. Due to the language barrier, the villagers' discussion with the captain took about 2 hours. And basically, what the captain and his self designated translator were able to piece together was that a few weeks after the company entered the village, the locals had noticed a variety of bizarre incidents. At first, it was just benign stuff like vanishing pieces of wood and tarp from people's sheds, but over the following 2 months, people realized that valuable items were being stolen from their homes. One man claimed that his family heirloom, a handmade ceremonial halberd, sort of like a traditional Swiss war axe, had disappeared from above his fireplace mantel. The culmination of all these incidents was when a child went missing. Of course, many assume that the child's disappearance, although tragic and disconcerting, could be contributed to something as simple as the boy falling into a snowdrift while playing outside, or possibly being attacked and killed by a wolf or other predatory animal. But there wasn't only one child that disappeared, there were several. The villager who entered the bar, who looked especially upset, that was the father of two young boys who had gone missing 2 days before. He had searched everywhere for them, even rounded up a posse of his fellow townspeople to join the effort. But they couldn't find a single clue as to what had happened to the children. The captain told the villagers that he would continue to look into the matter and that he would begin sending some of his men to patrol the streets each night looking for whoever or whatever was the culprit behind all the strange thefts and abductions. Later that night, Private Reginald disappeared from the barracks. Disappearing children was one thing, but a grown man, it seemed unlikely that an animal, even a wolf, could have taken down a healthy, fully grown man on its own. Naturally, rumors began to surface that there was some sort of monster living in the mountains and that it came down at night to feast on the occupants of the village. Despite the nightly patrols ordered by the captain, the disappearances kept occurring. Reginald was the only adult victim of whatever was preying on the village. The rest of the victims were all young kids between the ages of 5 and 10. All in all, including the original 3 kids who had gone missing, 7 children vanished from the town. Many people in Grandpa's company were growing suspicious. One explanation that got passed around was that the impoverished villagers were actually selling their own children to human traffickers to make extra cash. But even that didn't make sense because the roads into and out of town were still blocked by snow. 3 more weeks passed without incident. At this point, it was early spring and the snow was starting to thaw. That night, coincidentally, when my grandpa was on patrol with several other officers, they discovered what was behind the children and Reginald's disappearances. It was some time past midnight when my grandpa and his comrades noticed a figure peeking through the bedroom window of one of the villagers' houses. My grandpa was at the opposite end of the street, so at first the figure looking through the window didn't see the patrol. My grandpa and the other soldiers yelled at the prowler, and it immediately tore itself away from the window and began running away. Everyone in the patrol was certain that this is what was behind the disappearances and the break ins. They ran as fast as they could in pursuit through the melting snow and ice in the dead of night, screaming at whatever it was to stop. They kept running and screaming, and soon they found themselves on the outskirts of the village where the snow was fairly deep. The figure jumped into the ground. It looked like it had vanished into thin air at first, but as patrol grew closer, they realized that the prowler had actually just jumped into a cave that had been hollowed out on a side of a snowdrift. Just as the soldiers began yelling into the cave for the figure to come out and to show itself, several gunshots exploded out from the entrance of the snow cave. Without thinking, my grandpa and the rest of the patrol shouldered their weapons and all began firing into the hole. Silence. They waited for what seemed like hours, but was really just a couple of minutes. One incredibly brave member of the patrol volunteered to climb into the cave and investigate. He drew his pistol, kneeled down, and crawled into the cave. Several seconds later, he emerged with a completely horrified expression on his face. My grandpa took out his flashlight and shined it into the cave. When he saw the gruesome explanation within the strange occurrences in the town, the figure that they had been chasing was Reginald, the private who had gone missing weeks before. They had shot Reginald through the heart. The cave was not only occupied by Reginald, but also the bodies of 7 partially eaten children. Due to the stress of being snowed in all winter, living in near constant darkness, and some sort of terrible mental issue, Reginald had gone completely insane and had begun breaking into the villagers' houses and snatching their children from their homes in the middle of the night. He had used the halberd that had been reported missing to dismember the bodies after he slit the children's throats and hid them in the cave he carved into the snowdrift. It's supposed to be a true story.
What the fuck? There's a bunch of like stories about cannibalism during World War II.
But yeah, in Russia, I think it was in World War II, there was a everyone was starving
Mhm.
and parents were actually selling their kids to be eaten. Like there's a famous photo of two parents and their dead child on a table and they sold body parts.
I think what's extra crazy is like people had to do that to survive. My next story is from the subreddit Creepy. It's called Squatters Living in My Attic.
Them squatters.
This is 100% real. Well, I never thought I'd have a contribution to this sub, but now I do. My mom is a landlord and lives in the house right next to us. I live with my boyfriend, our dog, a 45-pound, 6-year-old boxer pit bull mixed named Delilah. She's all muscle and doesn't take kindly to strangers in the house. I work from home, and my classes are all online this semester, so I'm here a lot. This house is very old and built very utilitarian, just basic. No insulation, no central air, natural gas heat from radiators, etc. We moved in a year ago, and I've been hearing strange noises since we got here. The house was built in the 50s and creaks and cracks a lot. I've heard the skittering of feet, maybe a fat squirrel or a raccoon. Do we have raccoons here? In parentheses. I have a story where we had just like moved in and my husband was on duty because he was in the military. And there was some animal, some like heavy as shit animal in our vents. And I could hear it like walking around. Like it was like creak, like I don't know how to explain it. I could not sleep. I heard it and I could not go to sleep. I was terrified it was gonna like come into the house, like through the vents.
Did it go away?
It went away, but then it came back. Thankfully, he was there when it came back. And I was like, what is going on? And like I was terrified. So like I opened the vent and I started like hitting around like with a hammer. Cause I'm like, if I make a lot of noise, I'll scare it.
I feel like the thing to not do would be to open the vent with a large creature in it.
I mean, it was like really easy to open anyways. So, like if it really wanted to, it was coming inside anyways. So I covered all the vents. Like I moved around our furniture and I covered all the vents in the house and I like stayed in the bedroom. Like I shut the door and like had my kids in the bed with me. I'm just like, this is horrifying. I'm just guessing it was a really, really fat raccoon or a really, really fat cat. Maybe a possum. But like there was no meowing, like no noises or anything. Just like the sound of something huge going in vents. I was scared it was a human.
Was it in North Carolina or California?
North Carolina.
It was a man. Because you didn't live on base there, did you?
No, we didn't live on base until California.
It was a man.
I was horrified. Okay, anyway. There's an old chimney, but no fireplace, and the radiator is hooked up to it as an exhaust. I had to move my couch because old soot and gravel would come spitting out of the hole a few times a night. I thought it was odd, but I don't know how that stuff works. It's not unreasonable to think that it was getting hot and popping out. True. Just a girl.
Hot and popping.
A few times, though, maybe 6 or 8, I was so distracted by the dull thudding noises coming from above my head that I nearly called the cops. I would go outside, wake my sleeping boyfriend up, and proceed to freak out until he calmed me down enough. He always said...
You said go outside and wake my sleeping boyfriend up. I was like, why is he sleeping outside? Like he's not even allowed inside?
He's sleeping in a tent.
In the doghouse? Go on anyways, my bad.
He always said he didn't hear a peep and my mind was playing tricks on me, but he showed me where his collectible swords and a heavy pipe were just in case. He told me to keep the pepper spray by the bed if it made me feel better. We don't lock our doors, never have. That's a big mistake. We live in a sleepy tourist town in the Southwest. Unfortunately, there has been a boom of drug rehabilitation facilities opening up in this area in the last 2 decades. It's created quite a problem with rehab dropouts hanging around in the area, developing a growing homeless population. Why aren't you locking your
Like,
doors?
that's not enough to get you to lock the doors?
Right?
I lock my door in nice neighborhoods. Isn't it Richard Ramirez who he seen it as an opportunity, like, you inviting him in if, like, your doors or windows were unlocked?
Mhm.
Like, it was just like,
Yeah. It's like an open invitation.
"Lock your doors."
For real. Like, I don't care where you live or who you are. Please lock your doors. My mom had a guy squatting in her backyard that ended up being arrested and proving to be both high and schizophrenic. He has a blog we found about how he's God and threatening to cleanse the world. He's in rehab on the other side of the country now, so hopefully we're off his radar. But we live directly on a creek known for homeless drug activity.
What the fuck?
And you're not locking your door. What the fuck? All of this screams you should be locking your door.
We
So, knowing all this 4 months ago, my silverware disappeared. Poof, gone. It is not here in my house, nowhere to be found in my kitchen. My house is 600 square feet. How far can a few forks, knives, and spoons go? I had some people over to work on the plumbing since moving in and install a washer and dryer, but I was home while they were here. And why would they want my silverware? It was a just it was just a cheap set from Target, so I started racking my brain trying to figure out what the hell I'd done with it. I am the one who does the dishes and organizes the kitchen. I mentioned it to my boyfriend a few times in frustration since we only had 2 forks, 1 spoon, and 1 knife left. I told him we had too many dishes as it is, so I was in no hurry to replace them, but what the hell happened to them? Silverware doesn't just up and disappear. The odd thing is, we have about $5,000 in electronics in the house, and they're all untouched. No clothes or blankets are gone. We have all our pillows and towels. No food has ever turned up missing. Nothing. Just the silverware. Truly bizarre. This has been going on for 1 week shy of a year. I started to feel nuts because I'm not a hypochondriac slash suspicious type of person, but I could not shake the feeling something was very wrong. Well, tonight my mom calls me out front. It was 11:30 and I was rushing to finish some submissions for classes. I came out and she pointed out a light in my attic. You could see it through the cracks in the house. She asked how high the ceilings went up and I said, "Not that high. What the hell is going on?" She wanted to check it out herself, but I convinced her to call the cops. About 10 minutes later, 5 officers walked into the backyard where the attic access is. They got on the roof, flashlights and weapons drawn. That's when I started to freak out and cry. I tried to keep it together and walked away. My mom was comforting me and my boyfriend was standing guard. The officers explored the tiny attic and came out alone. No squatters. But there are sleeping bags, liquor, and beer bottles, torn up pillows, and papers up there. I know this has happened in the last 4 months because when we had the plumber out, we paid him a little extra money to have his guys empty the attic. It had toys and shoes and old TVs up there. We thought it was from the kids who used to live here. Turns out it was probably from a random strange man living in my house.
imagine how pissed he was when all the stuff he's accumulated
Right?
is just gone.
Not my TVs. I just had to get this off my chest. No way in hell am I sleeping tonight. I'm on high alert now and about to smoke the first cigarette since quitting last year. Fuck this. Fuck people. I'm adopting a pack of Rottweilers. In all seriousness, I'll be spending the next few days adding locks to all of my doors and windows. These people are still out there. There's just a bunch of people who are like yelling at them
I know,
for
I feel
not locking their door.
one time Anna was at the Walmart parking lot and I seen her car and she was minding her business. And I think I walked in and I just opened your door and I scared you.
Mhm.
And I said, "Why isn't your door locked?"
I always
Shame.
have my door locked now.
Yeah. The last time I scared you, you were sitting in my driveway and I just walked up and put my face on your window and you screeched.
I got scared by a Walmart employee this week.
Did you?
Yeah, on Monday. Because I looked to see if he was coming out with um the groceries, and then I was scrolling on my phone and I look over again, and all of a sudden there's a man standing at my window. I'm just like, oh my god.
Heavy breathing.
But
Okay.
at least I didn't scream.
That would have been hilarious if you had screamed. Um, my next one is from R No Sleep and it's titled Hunger. As a doctor, I'm bound by doctor patient privilege to not disclose the specifics of what I'm about to tell you. but as a human being, I feel compelled to share. This, without a doubt, the most horrific story I've ever had the displeasure of being a part of. It was 2009, and my schedule that day was light. I was just finishing up my lunch when I got a call from a friend and a colleague who had his own practice in the same building. Sometimes we would send work each other's way when we knew the other could use it. I was a bit elated at the prospect of him calling me because I had just been going over my book, stressing a bit. Are you busy right now? I'd like to send some help up to you, he said. No, my afternoon is barren. What are the details? A walk in? From the look of it, an eating disorder. Her mother is concerned. Eating disorder? Those can be unpleasant. I'd actually had a bulimic throw up in my office once when I stepped out momentarily to check on my calendar. Still, I needed the work. All right, send her up. I tried to tidy up my desk and make my office look more presentable and professional while I waited. 10 minutes ticked by and no patient showed up, so I stepped out to go looking for her. When I got to the hall, there was a small contingent of people standing around the elevator. They were talking amongst themselves. What's going on? I asked. The elevator's broke, someone said. Shit, I bet she's on there, I thought. What floor is it stuck on? The 10th and 11th. Yeah, that would be about right. My colleague's office was on the 10th, 3 floors down. I knew from experience that it could be anywhere up to an hour before they got the elevator working again. I hope she wasn't claustrophobic. Returning to my office, I called downstairs. What's up? My colleague asked after picking up. She's stuck in the elevator. He laughed. Really? Poor thing. What's her name? Amelia, he paused. Amelia D something? All right, thanks. If you get any impressions on her form from your brief visit, maybe can you share them later over drinks? Sure, I. Don't tell me. I want to go and form my own opinion first. Okay. True to form, an hour and 10 minutes later, I heard a loud cheer from the hallway, indicating the elevator had started working again. I should go make sure she's all right, I thought to myself, and went out to join the throng of people standing around in the hallway. There were a lot more people by then, and I couldn't make my way to the elevator doors or even see them from where I was, but I could hear it when the elevator dinged, indicating it was stopping on our floor, and the rolling mechanical sound of doors opening. There was a loud gasp from the crowd of people, followed by a lot of jabbering. Holy shit, someone said loudly. People started hustling away from the elevator, shoving past me. I struggled against the tide and made my way to where a number of people were standing around, staring into the elevator cab. As I approached, I could smell this stench. It was like stumbling into the apartment of a recluse who hadn't come out or bathed for years. It rolled like a wave out of the elevator and cascaded over everyone in the hallway. A young man in a business suit who looked overdressed for an interview was covering his mouth and nose with a handkerchief. I skirted around him to see into the elevator. The woman in the elevator was not at all what I was expecting, massively obese. She looked like she weighed somewhere around 500 to 600 pounds.
I thought someone was going to be dead.
Her face was so puffed up, her eyes were barely visible, just two dark dots above her cheeks. She had frizzled out brown hair that still had curlers in it. The notion that I was smiling a recluse seemed all more plausible at the sight of her. Her mouth was covered with what looked like greasy barbecue sauce. There was even some sort of gristle at the corners of her lips. There was more of it all over her hands and wiped down the front of her shirt. It looked like she had come straight out of an all you can eat rib buffet. Clenched tightly in one of her hands was a big black trash bag that sagged full of something that seemed to slosh around inside it. The smell coming out of it was nauseating. And the woman stepped out of the elevator, her eyes and nose running with tears and mucus. I stepped forward while everyone else backed away horrified. Amelia, I asked. She looked at me through her beady little piggy eyes, her cheeks covered with that vile red gunk and streaking with tears, and opened her mouth. For about 3 seconds, I had the horrible notion that she was going to vomit an entire barbecue on me. I I was hungry, she stuttered with a thick southern accent. The young man in the suit heaved involuntarily at the smell of her breath and then strode away, trying to maintain his demeanor. That's okay, I said, reaching out to help her. Do you want to talk about it in my office? Seeing me reach out to her, she clenched her black trash bag tightly and hugged it to her chest. The contents of it made a sickening squish sound. I could taste my own lunch in the back of my throat. Is that yours? I asked. I'm not going to take it. She started sobbing, this horrible, hob like squeal of a sob. Honestly, I didn't want to touch her. I wanted to go back into my office, lock the door, and pretend like I was glad My afternoon was completely empty. The smell wafting off of her and off of that bag of spoils was going to be permeating every crevice of my office for days. I just knew it. Still, this was a human being that had come seeking my help, and I was not about to turn her away. My office is right down the hall. Why don't you come with me? I started walking. In my head, I said, if she doesn't come with me, fuck it. But she followed me, lumbering on legs that stretched the limits of sweatpants she had on. I held the door open for her, and she waddled in, kneading the contents of that trash bag in her thick sausage fingers, making it belch and splurch. She stopped and stood there in the middle of my office. The elevator got stuck, she mumbled. Yes, I'm sorry about that. I hope you were all right. Thank goodness you brought something to eat, yes? She started crying again, squeezing her trash bag, and I was afraid it was going to explode and leave God knows what all over my office floor. She nodded as her face turned red and tears poured out of seemingly every pore of her head. I went and got her a box of tissues and handed her a couple. She tried to take them while still holding onto the bag with both hands. Would you like me to hold on to that? I offered, praying she'd say no. She shook her head. What do you have in there? I finally decided to ask. She huffed and snorted, trying to inhale all the fluid back into her face. Using one of the tissues, she mopped her eyes and mouth, getting blotchy red smears all over the place. Leftovers, she stuttered, and then her chest started heaving, and she threw her head back and started bawling again. Her face was like a fountain. She was so utterly miserable, and I really started to feel bad for her. Look, I said, getting stuck in that elevator was obviously pretty traumatic. Her wailing hit a crescendo. So why don't we postpone things until you've calmed down a bit? She struggled through her sobbing. You want to meet with me? Well, yes, not today. Why don't you go home and try to relax? I don't think you're in the right frame of mind right now to talk, but I want to help you. So let's schedule an appointment for later this week. How does that sound? I walked back to my desk and got out one of those cards. Her mouth was quivering and she looked ready to collapse into a pile of screaming phlegm, but she was calming down a bit, just nodding more than anything. She took my card with the same sticky fingers, holding several drippy tissues. Thank you, she said quietly. I couldn't read her face at all. Where the fuck did he come from?
He was hiding over there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you, she said quietly. I couldn't read her face at all. Her features were so red and swollen and wet that she seemed almost blank and expressionless. Do you want me to escort you down to the lobby? I asked, in case something happens with the elevator again. It should be all right, but I don't want you to be nervous. She shook her head. That doesn't seem like a good idea. Okay. And with that, she turned around and waddled out of my office, slowly, sobbing slightly every now and then. With her went that sloshy black trash bag, and with both of them went that putrid aroma of filth and squalor. I literally breathed a sigh of relief as I heard the door click. She never called me back. It was a week later that I finally got around to having drinks with my colleague from downstairs. We were relaxing, having a couple of beers, and I suddenly remembered her. Oh, thanks, by the way, I said. For what? For Amelia. Who? Amelia? Eating disorder? Last week you sent her up to me, remember? Oh, right. He sipped his beer. The one who got stuck in the elevator? How did that go? She was a wreck, I said, sobbing and practically hysterical. I talked her into rescheduling, but she hasn't called to make me an appointment. Did you talk to her mother? No, I didn't get any information from her. I gave her my card. What did you think? He asked. Classic food dependency, I said. Definitely a binge eater. Her face was just all, no, not the mother. I mean Amelia. What? What did you think of Amelia? He said again. I'm telling you what I thought. Amelia, the scrawny 12-year-old girl you think is a binge eater? What? That's not. And then it hit me. Was her mother with her? Yeah, I sent them both up to you. They were both in the elevator together? He looked at me, and then the same dawning realization came over his face. Needless to say, she never rescheduled. Amelia D. something, nor did her mother, the nameless obese woman that I met that day in the elevator, smelling like death, covered in gore and carrying her trash bag of sloshing leftovers.
I still can't get over the piggy
I
eyes.
know, that was rude.
The
That was
piggy
completely
eyes.
unnecessary.
I like how your theme was cannibalism.
I didn't mean for it to be. This Coke sucked today. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to say.
I took a drink. I'm like, this tastes a little weird.
Yeah, it tasted watered down.
It tastes like almost like Coke Zero.
McDonald's did not do it today.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Goodbye.